The gunshot that echoed through the canyon was the last thing Hannah Ramsey heard before her horse went down, throwing her hard against the rocky ground somewhere in the New Mexico territory. And when she opened her eyes, a tall figure stood silhouetted against the burning afternoon sun of July 1878. "Can you move?" The voice was deep, cautious, but not unkind. Hannah tried to push herself up, wincing as pain shot through her left ankle. Her vision swam, and she could taste copper in her mouth. "I think so." The man crouched down, and she could finally see his face. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of honey in sunlight. A scar ran along his jawline, giving him a dangerous look that his gentle hands contradicted as he checked her for injuries. "Those men still following you?" he asked. She nodded, fear tightening her throat. "They killed my father 3 days ago, took everything we had. I have been running since." "Can you ride?" When she nodded again, he helped her to her feet. Her ankle protested, but she could bear weight on it. "My name is Preston Quinn. I have got a small ranch about 5 miles north. We need to move now if those gunshots drew attention." He whistled, and a beautiful paint horse appeared from behind a cluster of rocks. Preston helped Hannah mount, then swung up behind her. His arm came around her waist to hold the reins, and despite her pain and fear, she felt momentarily safe. They rode hard for nearly an hour, taking a winding path through arroyos and over rocky terrain that would hide their tracks. Hannah's head pounded, and she leaned back against Preston's solid chest, fighting to stay conscious. She must have dozed because the next thing she knew, they were approaching a modest ranch house nestled in a valley between 2 ridges. The house was simple but well-maintained, built of adobe with a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. A barn stood nearby, along with a corral holding several horses. It was not much, but it looked like paradise to Hannah. Preston dismounted and carefully lifted her down. "Let me get you inside. You need water and rest." The interior was surprisingly tidy for a bachelor's home. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with a simple kitchen area and a table with 4 chairs nearby. 2 doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms. "Sit," Preston commanded gently, guiding her to a chair. He brought her water and she drank greedily, not realizing how parched she had been. While she drank, he examined her ankle more carefully. "Swollen but not broken," he said. "I will wrap it. You have other injuries." "Just bruises, I think." She touched her temple where a knot had formed. "And this?" He brought a cloth dampened with cool water and pressed it gently to the bump. Their eyes met, and Hannah felt something shift in her chest. This stranger had saved her life, asked nothing in return, and was now tending her wounds with a tenderness she had not experienced since her mother died 5 years ago. "Thank you," she whispered. Preston's expression softened. "Those men, do you know who they were? Drifters, I think. Maybe outlaws. My father and I were traveling from Texas to California. He had inherited land from his brother. We stopped to water our horses at a stream and they just appeared, 4 of them." Her voice broke. "They wanted our horses, our supplies. My father tried to reason with them, but they shot him anyway. I managed to get away on my horse, but they have been tracking me." "They will not find you here," Preston said with quiet conviction. "This ranch is hard to spot unless you know it exists, and I am not easy to intimidate." Over the next few days, Hannah recovered her strength. Preston gave her his room and took the smaller one, insisting despite her protests. He was a man of few words but many kindnesses. He cooked simple but nourishing meals, changed the wrapping on her ankle daily, and never pressed her with questions she was not ready to answer. Hannah learned that Preston had built this ranch himself over the past 4 years. He ran cattle and bred horses, making enough to live simply but independently. He had no family left, his parents and younger sister having died from fever when he was 22. The land and the solitude suited him, or so he claimed. "You not get lonely?" Hannah asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Preston was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes, but loneliness is safer than the alternative." "What alternative?" "Caring about people, losing them." He turned to look at her, and the raw pain in his eyes made her breath catch. "Everyone I ever loved died. Seemed simpler to just be alone." "That is not living," Hannah said softly. "That is just surviving. Maybe," he stood abruptly, "I will check on the horses." Hannah watched him walk away, recognizing the walls he had built around himself because she had her own. Her mother's death had devastated her father, turning him quiet and distant. Then, just when they had been starting fresh, heading toward a new life, he had been taken too. She understood Preston's desire to protect himself from more pain, but something about being here with him made her want to tear down those walls, both his and her own. A week after her arrival, Hannah was well enough to help around the ranch. Preston protested, but she insisted. "I cannot just sit idle while you work. Let me earn my keep. You are a guest, not a hired hand." "Then let me be useful as a guest." He relented, and Hannah discovered she enjoyed the work. She fed the chickens Preston kept for eggs, helped in the garden he maintained, and even began cooking their meals. Preston was competent in the kitchen, but Hannah had learned from her mother, and she took pleasure in watching his face when he tasted her stew or cornbread. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked one night, his second helping half finished. "My mother. She said a good meal could heal almost anything." Hannah smiled at the memory. She was right most of the time. She must have been a remarkable woman. She was, strong and kind and brave. "When she died, something in my father broke. He loved her so completely that losing her nearly destroyed him." Preston set down his fork. "That is what I meant about caring being dangerous. But would you rather he never loved her at all, never had those years of happiness?" Hannah leaned forward. "Love is worth the risk of loss. Easy to say when you are young. I am 21, not a child, and I have lost people too." Her voice hardened slightly. "But I will not let fear keep me from living." Something flickered in Preston's eyes. Admiration, maybe, or challenge. "You are braver than me, then, or more foolish," he smiled, a real smile that transformed his whole face. "Maybe both." The ease between them grew. Hannah found herself looking forward to their meals together, to their evening conversations on the porch, to the way Preston's eyes softened when he looked at her. She was falling for him, she realized with both joy and terror. This quiet, wounded man who had given her shelter and asked nothing in return. But did he feel the same? He was kind to her, certainly, protective, but he kept a careful distance, never touching her unless necessary, always proper and controlled. 3 weeks after her arrival, riders appeared on the horizon. Preston saw them first. He and Hannah were mending a section of fence when he straightened, his hand moving instinctively to the rifle he kept nearby. "Get to the house," he said quietly. "Now. Preston, Hannah, please, just go." She ran, her ankle only slightly tender now. From the window she watched as 3 men rode up to where Preston stood, rifle held casually but ready. Her blood went cold. She recognized 2 of them. They were with the group that killed her father. Preston's voice carried on the wind. "You are on private property." "We are looking for someone," the lead rider said. He was a big man with a scarred face and dead eyes. "A girl, dark hair, riding alone, might have come through here. Have not seen anyone matching that description." "You sure about that?" The man's tone turned menacing. "Because we tracked her to this area, and we really need to find her." I said I have not seen her. Now get off my land. The three men exchanged glances. The leader leaned forward in his saddle. Maybe we should look around, make sure you are not hiding her. Preston raised the rifle slightly. And maybe you should leave while you still can. 3 against 1 might seem like good odds, but I guarantee at least 2 of you will not ride away. The tension stretched taut as a wire. Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run out there, to tell them to leave Preston alone, that she would go with them if it meant keeping him safe. But she knew that would be the worst thing she could do. After a long moment, the leader spat on the ground. "We will be back, if we find out you have been lying. You know where to find me." Preston's voice was steady as stone. The men turned their horses and rode off, but Hannah knew this was not over. She met Preston at the door and he pulled her inside quickly, checking the windows. "You need to leave," he said. "Tonight. I will give you supplies and my fastest horse. You can head to Hachita, catch a stage from there." "No, Hannah, those men will not give up, and if they come back with more, then we will face them together." She grabbed his arm. "I am not leaving you to deal with this alone. They are after me. This is my fight, which is exactly why you should go." His control cracked, raw emotion flooding his voice. "Do you not understand? They will kill you, and probably me too when I try to stop them. But if you leave now, you have a chance. And you will have to face them anyway, because they will come back to make sure you were not lying." Hannah stepped closer. "We are safer together, Preston. How do you figure that? Because you are not alone anymore, and neither am I." Something broke in him. He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, and Hannah felt him shaking. "I cannot lose someone else," he whispered into her hair. "I cannot." She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "Then we make sure neither of us gets lost." They spent the evening preparing. Preston had more weapons than Hannah had realized, and he was a better shot than most men she had known. He taught her to reload quickly, to aim for center mass, to not hesitate if the time came. "If shooting starts, you get to cover and you stay there until it is over," he instructed. "Preston, promise me, Hannah, please." She saw the fear beneath his stern expression and nodded. "I promise." That night they took turns keeping watch. During Hannah's shift, around 3 in the morning, she sat on the porch with a rifle across her lap and thought about how drastically her life had changed in less than a month. She had gone from a dutiful daughter traveling to a new life, to a hunted fugitive, to a woman falling in love with a cowboy who had offered her shelter. Love. Yes, that is what this was. She loved Preston Quinn with his sad eyes and gentle hands and fierce protectiveness. She loved the way he smiled when he thought she was not looking, the way he listened when she talked, the way he made her feel safe in a world that had become terrifyingly dangerous. But did he love her? Or was he just being honorable, protecting someone in need? Cannot sleep. Preston's voice made her jump. He stepped out onto the porch, 2 cups of coffee in hand, just thinking. "About?" Hannah accepted the coffee, letting its warmth spread through her hands. "About how strange life is. A month ago I did not know you existed. Now I cannot imagine not knowing you." Preston sat beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "I know what you mean. This house has been quiet for 4 years. Now when you are not in a room it feels empty." Her heart stuttered. "Preston, I am not good with words, Hannah, never have been. But you should know that having you here, it has changed something in me. Made me remember what it feels like to wake up and have a reason beyond just surviving another day." She set down her coffee and took his hand. His fingers were calloused and strong, and they closed around hers like she was something precious. "You saved my life. You saved mine too, just in a different way." They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars wheel overhead. Hannah felt the rightness of this moment settle into her bones. Whatever came next, whatever danger tomorrow might bring, Right now she was exactly where she was meant to be. The attack came 2 days later. Hannah was in the garden when she heard the thunder of hooves. She looked up to see at least 6 riders charging toward the ranch. Her blood turned to ice. Preston was in the barn. "Preston!" she screamed, running. He emerged at her cry, took in the situation instantly. The house! Now they ran together, Hannah's heart threatening to burst from her chest. Bullets kicked up dirt around their feet. They made it to the porch and Preston shoved her through the door, slamming and barring it behind them. "Windows!" he commanded, and they each took a position. Preston had prepared for this, placing loaded rifles at strategic points throughout the house. The riders circled the house, whooping and firing. Preston returned fire carefully, making each shot count. Hannah's hands shook as she gripped her rifle. "On my mark, you shoot at the one near the water trough," Preston said calmly. "Do not think. Just breathe and squeeze." She nodded, sighted down the barrel, and when Preston said, "Now," she fired. The man jerked and fell from his horse. She had hit him. "Good girl, get down now." The assault intensified. Windows shattered. Preston moved between positions, firing methodically. His face was set in hard lines, and Hannah saw the soldier he must have been in the war years ago. "We cannot hold them off forever," Hannah said during a brief lull. "Do not need forever, just long enough." "For what? Help?" "I sent a ranch hand to Hachita yesterday with a message for the marshal. He should be here by nightfall." Hope flared in Hannah's chest. "Why did you not tell me?" "Did not want to get your hopes up in case he did not make it." Preston reloaded quickly. "Stay low. They are going to rush the house." He was right. The remaining 5 men dismounted and approached on foot, using the outbuildings for cover. Preston's jaw tightened. This was bad. "Hannah, I need you to listen carefully. There is a root cellar in the back bedroom. If they breach the house, I want you to hide there." "No. I am not leaving you." "Hannah, no." She grabbed his arm. "We survive together or not at all. That is how this works." He stared at her for a long moment, then pulled her close and kissed her hard. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything they had not yet said to each other. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I love you," Preston said. "I need you to know that. I love you, Hannah Ramsey, and I am done being afraid of it." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you too, so we are going to survive this, do you hear me? Both of us." "Both of us," he agreed. The outlaws made their move. 2 came at the front door with a heavy beam, trying to ram it open. Preston fired through the door and she heard a scream, but the door was starting to give. Then, miraculously, new gunfire erupted from outside. Different angles. The marshal had arrived. The battle turned quickly after that. Caught between the house and the lawmen, the outlaws tried to flee but were cut down or captured. When the guns finally fell silent, Hannah's ears rang in the sudden quiet. Preston checked the windows carefully, then unbarred the door. Standing in the yard was Marshal Tom Hendricks with 4 deputies, along with Preston's ranch hand, a young man named James. "You folks all right?" the marshal called. "We are now," Preston replied, his arm coming around Hannah's shoulders. "The aftermath took hours." The marshal took statements, collected the bodies, and secured the 3 surviving outlaws for transport back to Hachita for trial. One of them was the leader, the man with dead eyes who had killed Hannah's father. "You will testify?" the marshal asked Hannah. "Yes." "I want them to pay for what they did." "They will. I promise you that, miss." As the sun set, the lawmen finally departed with their prisoners. Preston and Hannah stood on the porch, exhausted but alive. The ranch was damaged but still standing, like them. "What happens now?" Hannah asked. Preston turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "That depends. I know you were heading to California to claim your father's inheritance. If you still want to go, I will understand. I will even take you there, make sure you get there safe." And if I do not want to go, then I would like you to stay here, with me, as my wife if you will have me." He squeezed her hands. "I know this is fast, and I know I am not much of a catch, just a cowboy with a small ranch and a lot of scars. But I love you, Hannah. I want to build a life with you if you will let me." Joy bubbled up in her chest, bright and pure. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "We should go to Hatchita tomorrow," Preston said. "Get married proper, make sure those men are locked up tight. And then we come home and start our life together." They rode to Hatchita the next morning. The town was small but growing, situated along the southern route through New Mexico territory. The marshal met them at his office, pleased to report that all 3 surviving outlaws had confessed, hoping for leniency. They would hang within the month. "Justice for your father," the marshal told Hannah. "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Marshal." They found the local minister, a kind man named Reverend Peters, who agreed to marry them that very afternoon. The ceremony was simple, held in the small wooden church with the marshal and his wife as witnesses. Hannah wore a simple blue dress she had purchased from the general store, and Preston had cleaned up in a proper suit that made him look both handsome and uncomfortable. "Do you, Preston William Quinn, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Preston's voice was strong and sure. "And do you, Hannah Marie Ramsey, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" "I do." Hannah's eyes never left Preston's face. "Then by the power vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Preston cupped her face gently and kissed her, and Hannah felt the last piece of her broken heart slot back into place. She was home. Not the ranch, not New Mexico, but here in Preston's arms. That was home. They spent their wedding night at the small hotel in Hatchita, a luxury after weeks of danger and uncertainty. Preston was gentle and patient, and Hannah had never felt more cherished or loved. They talked late into the night about their future, about the ranch, about the life they would build together. "I want children," Hannah said, her head resting on Preston's chest. "Lots of them. I want our house to be full of noise and laughter." "I would like that." Preston's hand stroked through her hair. "I want to give you everything, Hannah. Everything I have, everything I am. You already have. You gave me a reason to keep living when I thought I had lost everything." "We saved each other," he said simply. They returned to the ranch 3 days later, ready to begin their married life in earnest. The bullet holes in the walls were reminders of how close they had come to losing everything, but they would repair the damage together, make the ranch even stronger than before. Hannah threw herself into making the house a home. She planted flowers around the porch, made curtains for the windows, and filled the rooms with small touches that transformed the bachelor's cabin into a family dwelling. Preston watched her work with quiet contentment, occasionally helping but mostly just enjoying seeing her so happy. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Preston's cattle herd grew, and his horses gained a reputation for quality throughout the territory. Hannah proved to have a gift for breeding chickens and maintaining the garden, and soon they were selling eggs and vegetables to the general store in Hatchita. But their greatest joy came 10 months after their wedding, when Hannah discovered she was pregnant. Preston's face when she told him was something Hannah would treasure forever. Wonder and fear and absolute joy all mixed together. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "Very sure. We are going to have a baby, Preston." He picked her up and spun her around, laughing like she had never heard him laugh before. When he set her down, there were tears in his eyes. "I am going to be a father." "A wonderful father," Hannah assured him, wiping away his tears with her thumbs. "Our child is so lucky to have you." The pregnancy was not easy. Hannah was sick for the first 3 months, barely able to keep anything down. Preston fussed over her constantly, bringing her water and crackers, holding her hair when she was ill, sleeping on the floor beside their bed when she was too uncomfortable to want him next to her. "You do not have to do all this," she protested weakly one morning after a particularly bad bout of sickness. "Yes, I do. You are carrying our child, suffering to bring our baby into the world. The least I can do is hold your hand through it." As her belly grew, so did Preston's protectiveness. He would not let her lift anything heavy, insisted she rest every afternoon, and shadowed her whenever she went outside. It drove Hannah a little crazy, but she also found it endearing. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she said one day when he tried to prevent her from hanging laundry. "I know. But you are precious, both of you." His hand rested on her swollen belly, and his expression softened when the baby kicked against his palm. "I will never take this for granted, Hannah. Never." She understood then. He had lost so much in his life that every moment of happiness felt fragile to him. So she let him fuss, let him worry, because she knew it came from love. Their son was born on a cool April evening in 1880, after 14 hours of labor that terrified Preston and exhausted Hannah. The doctor from Hachita attended, along with the marshal's wife, a capable woman named Sarah who had delivered half the babies in town. When Preston finally heard his son's first cry, he burst into the bedroom, ignoring Sarah's protests about propriety. Hannah, sweaty and pale but smiling, held a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. "Meet your son," she said softly. Preston approached slowly, almost reverently. When he looked down at the baby's small red face, tears streamed unashamedly down his cheeks. "He is perfect." "He looks like you," Hannah observed. The baby had Preston's dark hair and the same shaped nose. "Poor kid." Preston carefully took the baby, cradling him like he was made of spun glass. "Hello, little one, I am your papa. And I promise I will spend every day of my life making sure you know you are loved." They named him Peter Thomas Quinn, after Preston's father and the marshal who had saved their lives. Little Peter was a healthy, robust baby with powerful lungs and his father's stubborn streak. Those early months were exhausting but wonderful. Preston proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with Peter at night when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, and staring at his son for hours like he could not quite believe he was real. "I never thought I could be this happy," Preston confessed one night as they watched Peter sleep in his cradle. "After my family died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I would just exist until I did not anymore. Then you came along and changed everything." Hannah leaned against him. "You changed everything for me too. I was so lost after my father died, scared and alone. You gave me not just shelter but a home, a family, a future. We gave that to each other." Peter grew quickly, a cheerful baby who became an adventurous toddler. By the time he was 2, Hannah was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and their daughter, Grace Eleanor Quinn, was born on a snowy December morning. She had Hannah's dark eyes and a calm temperament that balanced her brother's boundless energy. The ranch continued to thrive. Preston hired 2 ranch hands to help with the growing herds, good men who respected their employer and his family. Hannah's garden expanded, and she began selling preserves and baked goods in town. Their life was full and rich, and everything Hannah had never dared to dream of. One evening, when Peter was 5 and Grace was 3, they all sat on the porch watching the sunset. Peter was telling an elaborate story about a dragon he had seen in the clouds, while Grace sat contentedly in Hannah's lap, sucking her thumb. Preston reached over and took Hannah's free hand. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Staying here instead of going to California?" "Never, not for a single moment." She squeezed his hand. "This is where I belong, with you, with our family. I love you, Hannah Quinn, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." "That is very poetic for a cowboy," he grinned. "I have my moments." Their third child, another son named James Robert, was born 2 years later. Then came twin girls, Sarah and Emma, who kept their parents on their toes with their mischievous ways. 5 children filled their home with exactly the noise and laughter Hannah had dreamed of. The years passed in a blur of growing children, expanding herds and deepening love. Preston's hair began to show silver at the temples, and Hannah found laugh lines around her eyes that she wore proudly. They had built something remarkable together, not just a successful ranch, but a true home filled with love. Peter grew into a fine young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. He had Preston's steady nature and Hannah's kind heart. Grace was quick-witted and clever, always reading when she could steal a moment. James was the dreamer, talking about seeing the world beyond New Mexico. The twins were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences and getting into delightful trouble. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Preston surprised Hannah with a trip back to Hatchita. They left the children with the ranch hands and their wives, who had become like family over the years. "Where are we going?" Hannah asked as Preston drove the wagon toward town. "You will see." He stopped in front of a building Hannah did not recognize at first. Then she realized it had been the old boarding house, but now it was completely renovated. A sign hung above the door, "Ramsey House." "Preston, what is this?" "I bought it 6 months ago, had it fixed up." He helped her down from the wagon. "I know how much you loved your father, how much it hurt to lose him. I thought maybe we could honor his memory by turning this into a place that helps people. Travelers who need shelter, people down on their luck, the way I gave you shelter when you needed it." Tears poured down Hannah's face. "You did this for me, for us, for the family we have built, to remember where we started." He cupped her face. "Your father may have died on the road, but his daughter lived to create something beautiful. I thought he would want to be part of that somehow." Inside, the boarding house was clean and welcoming, with 6 rooms upstairs and a large common area below. Hannah walked through it, imagining the people they could help, the lives they might touch. "It is perfect," she whispered. "Thank you." They hired a couple from town to run the boarding house, a widow named Margaret and her brother, both of whom had fallen on hard times. The Ramsey house became known throughout the territory as a place where anyone could find shelter and kindness, no questions asked. It became Preston and Hannah's way of passing forward the grace that had brought them together. As their children grew and started families of their own, Preston and Hannah found themselves with a ranch that sprawled over 3,000 acres, children who adored them, and grandchildren who thought they hung the moon. But through it all, they never lost sight of what mattered most: each other. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Preston took Hannah riding up to the ridge where he had first brought her all those years ago. They were older now, gray-haired and wrinkled, but Preston still helped her onto her horse with the same gentle care he had shown that first day. They sat on the ridge watching the sun set over their land, their children's homes visible in the distance, smoke rising from chimneys. "I have been thinking about that day I found you," Preston said. "If I had taken a different path through that canyon, if I had been 5 minutes earlier or later, we might never have met. But we did meet, and everything that has happened since has been worth every moment of fear and pain that brought us together. I used to think love was dangerous." that caring about people would only lead to loss and heartbreak. Preston pulled her close. You taught me that the real danger is in not loving, in protecting yourself so well that you stop really living. We have had a good life, Preston Quinn, the best life, and it is not over yet. He kissed her softly. I plan to love you for at least another 30 years. Only 30? Well, maybe 40. I am ambitious. She laughed, the sound carrying on the evening breeze. Below them, the ranch was settling in for the night. Their son Peter and his wife were lighting lamps in the foreman's house. Grace and her husband were calling their children in for dinner. James had indeed traveled the world but always came home, currently staying in the main house between adventures. The twins lived in Hachita with their families but visited every Sunday. It was a legacy of love, Hannah thought. Everything they had built together, starting from one moment of grace when a cowboy had offered shelter to a stranger. What are you thinking about? Preston asked. How grateful I am. For you, for our family, for this life. She rested her head on his shoulder. You saved me in that canyon, but you have been saving me every day since, making me laugh when I am sad, holding me when I am scared, loving me even when I am difficult. You are never difficult. Spirited, yes. Passionate, stubborn as a mule sometimes. He grinned when she elbowed him. But never difficult, and loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done. You make it effortless, Hannah. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. The same stars that had witnessed their first tentative conversations on the porch, their wedding, the births of their children, every moment of joy and sorrow and triumph they had shared. You remember what you said that first night? Hannah asked. About loneliness being safer. I was a fool. No, you were hurt, but you healed. We healed each other. Preston stood and offered his hand. We should get back before the children send out a search party. Hannah took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Even after 30 years, his touch still sent warmth through her. They mounted their horses and began the ride back, taking their time in the fading light. When they reached the ranch, their entire family was waiting on the porch. Peter and his 4 children, Grace with her husband and their 3. James, currently unattached but never lacking for admirers. The twins and their broods. And standing in the midst of them all was their youngest grandchild, 2-year-old Hannah, named for her grandmother. Surprise! They all shouted as Preston and Hannah dismounted. The porch was decorated with lanterns and ribbons. A huge meal had been laid out on tables in the yard. There was music and dancing and laughter that rang through the valley. As Preston and Hannah danced their first dance of the evening, surrounded by the family they had created, Hannah thought back to that terrified girl running for her life through the New Mexico desert. She could never have imagined this future. Never dreamed that the cowboy who offered her shelter would become her everything. Happy anniversary, Mrs. Quinn, Preston murmured in her ear. Happy anniversary, Mr. Quinn. Any regrets? Not a single one. He twirled her and she laughed, feeling young and carefree despite her 51 years. Their children clapped and cheered. Little Hannah toddled over and grabbed her grandfather's leg, demanding to be picked up. Preston scooped her up without missing a beat, dancing with both his wife and his granddaughter. Later, after the party had wound down and the family had dispersed to their various homes, Preston and Hannah sat on their porch swing. It was the same swing Preston had built the year Peter was born, worn smooth now by countless hours of sitting together. Tell me a secret, Hannah said, playing the game they had invented years ago. Preston thought for a moment. I still watch you sometimes when you are working in the garden or playing with the grandchildren, and I still cannot quite believe you chose me, chose this life. That is not much of a secret. I know you do that. Your turn. Hannah snuggled closer. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I am scared it is all a dream, that I will open my eyes and be back in that canyon, alone and hunted. Then I feel you beside me and I remember it is all real." Preston kissed her forehead. "It is real, all of it, and I am not going anywhere. Promise, promise." They rocked gently, the creak of the swing a familiar rhythm. An owl hooted in the distance. The horses nickered softly in the barn. Everything was peaceful, perfect. "Preston, thank you for giving me shelter that day." He was quiet for a moment, then pulled her closer. "Thank you for giving me a reason to open my door." As they sat there under the stars, Hannah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, the tragedy that had set her running, the grace that had led her to Preston, the love that had transformed them both from broken, lonely people into partners who had built something beautiful together. She thought about her father and the inheritance in California she had never claimed. Sometimes she wondered what that life would have been like. But she could not imagine it being better than this. Richer, maybe, in terms of money, but poverty in every way that mattered. Here in this valley with this man and the family they had created, she had found her true inheritance. Love, belonging, purpose, home. Preston started humming an old song, and Hannah joined in, their voices blending in the darkness. Tomorrow they would wake early and tend to the ranch. Their children and grandchildren would visit. Life would continue in its beautiful, ordinary way. But tonight, they simply sat together, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and built a lifetime of love from a single act of compassion. The cowboy had offered shelter to a stranger, and she had become not just the love he never expected, but the answer to prayers he had stopped praying. Together, they had created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, passed down through generations in the stories their grandchildren would tell, stories of courage and kindness, of second chances and new beginnings, of a love that had started with a gunshot echoing through a canyon and had grown into something eternal. As the night deepened and the stars wheeled overhead, Preston and Hannah Quinn sat together on their porch, hands intertwined, hearts joined, exactly where they were always meant to be, the end.